Hello farmers and aspiring farmers, my name is Wadzanai Manyore, coming to you with yet another informative edition of your program, Agricultural New Directions Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. Today we are here in Mazowe at Henderson Research Station, where we are looking at breeding stock production here in Zimbabwe. You would find that in potato production, we have seed potato production, and at the same time we have those farmers who focus on table potato production, which is the same exact scenario when it comes to fish production here in Zimbabwe. We have those farmers that look into breeding stock production, whilst we have the majority of our farmers who focus on table fish production. But in this very episode, we are going to be focusing on those farmers who want to venture into breeding stock production, those that want to produce seed or the necessities of how a farmer can get into fish production. To discuss this and more, I've taken the liberty of inviting Ms. Ravahera. She is the Deputy Director Aquaculture Production in the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development. Ms. Ravahera, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Adzanai.
Ms. Ravahera, it finds that here in Zimbabwe, we have the majority of our farmers, like I said, who are into table fish production. But at the same time, we also have a division whereby farmers can get into breeding stock production. Those that want to produce mbeu. There are those farmers who want to get into fish production, but focusing on the breeding stock. From an expert's perspective, what are the requirements for a farmer to be successful in breeding stock production?
Thank you, Adzanai. Speaking of breeding stock production, this is an area which is highly technical and would need very good equipment. The farmers who are into broodstock production, they need to have the technical expertise. Firstly, we would maybe talk about biosecurity measures. The farm, is it well fenced to keep away any movements, there's restricted movement even of personnel. We need fire water bars at the entrances, the wheel bars for our vehicles. We also need for sanitizing our hands before we get to the breeding ponds. The water reticulation of that farm has to be up to scratch. There's high requirement of good quality water so that our broodstock is kept in good condition. The broodstock management is also of high management requirements. They have different feed requirements from the table fish, as we are talking of breeding stock, because they need to be maintained, they need to be fed for them to be able to produce, just like maybe we do to any other livestock. Talk of dairy, talk of poultry, they have to be fed so that they can produce, not going overfed, but for them to be productive. We are looking at maybe an average of 40 to 45% crude protein requirement for broodstock. And this is not an easy area or an easy chapter to talk about. We really do discourage farmers to just say, today I am going to breed and I'm going to sell fingerlings. And even the farmers who are buying fingerlings, they need to buy from reputable breeders who have got enough resources, enough material. Because look at our breeding stock, we need to take maybe we get them as young as fingerlings, or probably we acquire them as eggs. You hatch them. During the hatching, they need to be sanitized, they need to be disinfected before they are stocked. So there are a lot of stages that broodstock has to undergo before they come to be breeding.
Okay.
We also need facilities whereby we have to separate the males and the females. For a breeding farm to be operational, we need a setup of the female breeding stock, male breeding stock. Then we have a pond which we are saying this is our breeding pond, whereby one has to look at the full fish. Or when we are talking of a full fish, we are talking of a fish which is now pregnant, to speak in the layman's language. It's full of eggs. So you can actually take them, you put them in a breeding pond, and the sex ratio for our breeding fish, we are looking at 1:2, 1 male for every 2 females,
Okay.
or 1 male for every 3 females. If we put more males in that pond, there will be a lot of fighting. You know, varume vagara, they
Yeah.
fight for the females. So we need to reduce the number of males so that we don't have a loss on eggs that will go unfertilized.
Now, looking at your breeding stock, are there certain characteristics that you look at saying that this fish is suitable for breeding, this female is suitable for breeding? What are we looking at? And still on that, can we talk to us in terms of the lifespan of that fish?
Selection is the most important tool that we need to employ when we are selecting breeding stock. And like any other livestock, we need to select viable males, viable females. Probably, maybe if I say viability, it might not sound well, but phenotypically,
Yes.
a female should look female,
Yes.
and a male
Should look
be
masculine.
masculine.
Yes.
So that we are talking of a healthy brood stock to start with. No deformities, and the phenotypic representation should be up to the breed or the species.
Yes.
If we are breeding Oreochromis niloticus, so the male should be Oreochromis niloticus and the female should be Oreochromis niloticus.
There's no crossbreeding.
Well, if we do crossbreeding, that's another chapter that we
Yes,
can talk
about.
and we can write books about crossbreeding. But we are talking about pure breeding, where we have the Oreochromis niloticus males and Oreochromis niloticus females.
Yes.
So we are talking of them being, having no deformities and no diseases. We are looking at them being in their normal health status. So if you acquire your breeding stock while they are still eggs, it means they have to go through a lot of selection
Yes.
during hatching, after hatching, as fingerlings, when they get to be growers, until they start breeding. So you will be selecting through until you are left with what you can call broodstock, which is viable and of good order.
So just out of question, I understand that there are those who are taking notes. It is impossible for a person to just say, owedzeri mpondi mangu idzi ndaakutora vana mai avo nana baba avo yatova breeding stock. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you may select if you want to go that way. And however, we don't encourage farmers to breed on their own.
Yes.
Unless you are maybe a very poor resourced farmer who is saying, I cannot go for monosex culture. We'll discuss monosex culture later. But actually, we want to encourage farmers to go for the monosex or the sex reversed for pond production. But on their breeding stock, for those who are breeding, we are looking at fish that are whole, that do not have any deformities.
Yes.
Fish that are well fed and well managed, that are separated after breeding, because what you do is like we are hen sexing. You pick them, you put them in the breeding pond. All those who are full, they breed after 2-3 weeks. You move them, you put them to the resting pond. You take another set, you bring them for breeding.
Okay.
They breed and you separate the sexes so that they also have to rest.
Okay.
And we are looking at when fish are starting to breed. Probably they are going to start when they are maybe 10-15 centimeters. The number of eggs will be less, maybe up to 100 eggs. And these will increase with the length and weight of the female. For our tilapia species, we are looking to maybe up to 1,000 eggs per sitting. I want to talk about pond culture as we come back.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rawahera, for such a detailed presentation. Viewers, we are looking at the breeding stock in fish farming. You would find that the majority of our Zimbabwean farmers are still in table fish production. It might be due to a knowledge gap or even maybe lack of capital injections to ensure that they are viable and sustainable within their ventures. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. You are watching the breeding stock production episode. We have taken the liberty of inviting experts to ensure that as Zimbabwean farmers, we do have the knowledge on how to produce our fish. You do have options. You can get into table fish production, whilst at the same time, we do have a few that can produce the stock for us. We are talking of fingerlings production for our local farmers here in Zimbabwe. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with the producer Wadzanai Manyore. It's on 0772807506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Leave your comments and suggestions and make a follow-up on this episode and more on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also now available on Twitter, where most of these discussions do take place. It's at Agribusiness 110. Now, earlier on, during the break, Ms. Rawahera here promised us to talk about pond culture. Ms. Rawahera, welcome back. We are in the second segment.
Thank you, Wadzanai.
Yes. Can you talk to us in terms of pond culture? What is it? A description and a synopsis of what pond culture is when it comes to breeding stock production here in Zimbabwe.
When we are talking of pond culture production, we are looking at breeding in the ponds, because fish can be bred in different scenarios. We can have them in tanks, we can have them in happers, but here I want to discuss pond culture, whereby we're saying we are breeding the fish in the ponds. And as earlier on alluded to, we have separate housing for the females and the males. We take them into a pond and then we breed them. Every day in pond culture, we have to collect the fry. Fry is the fish soon after hatching, Wadzanai, the one that still has a yolk sac, just like we have yolk sac in our chickens. Soon after hatching, we collect all the fry and take them to the nursery housing, where we're going to manage the young hatchlings, and we will then decide whether we're going to have monosex or we are going to breed and leave them as mixed sex.
Okay.
Thank you.
When it comes to fish production, what are those signs that you see that your fish is ready for breeding?
Thank you, Wadzanai. Unlike the piggery, where the boar has to be brought to the female for mating, fish, they have their own unique way of breeding, whereby the males, when they are ready, they put on beautiful colors. Yeah, the oranges, the pink, very bright colors, so that they can attract the females, unlike the other in the humans, where maybe the ladies have to attract the
They
males.
are the ones who have to put on beautiful colors and lipsticks.
So it's the males that put on beautiful colors. They go and make nests in the shallow edges of the pond. After making nests, a female identifies a male that it wants to mate with. So courtship begins there, and courtship can go for maybe 5 days, or even it can run for a few days. The female now comes on the nest and lays eggs. After laying eggs, the male comes back and milks. This is external fertilization, and for tilapia species, we are talking of egg layers. And these fish are mouth brooders, Wadzanai. After the male has fertilized the eggs, the female picks the eggs in her mouth for hatching, depending on temperatures, water temperatures. If it's warm enough, within a week, or maybe 7 to 9 days, we expect them to hatch. If it's colder, maybe they can go up to 15 days before they are hatched. So once they are hatched, she continues to keep the larva in the mouth for it to develop. Once it develops into a fry, that small fish, sometimes it's going to be let out to swim, and once she senses danger, she keeps them in. Until then, this is how they would live in the pond. So they need to collect the fry on daily basis. However, if we are doing commercial, they can actually even take the eggs while they are still in the mouths of the females. Once they pick the eggs after fertilization, you can actually harvest eggs from the mouth. Then they undergo the cleaning, the disinfection that we have discussed earlier on. So once we do that, we now need to go on sex reversal, which is an area that we'll discuss later. And I will introduce to you our student, a master's student, whom we are working with here. She's going to discuss on sex reversal. Why do we need to do sex reversal? It's because we want them to grow very fast and to produce a uniform crop of one sex. You can't go for monosex culture if you are very small and you are starting. You can actually have your small pond where you buy mixed fish and they grow and they breed. The disadvantage is there is continuous breeding. You can't harvest a uniform crop. You know, there is stunting. So we really discourage growing mixed sex in the ponds, but for very small farmers, for the communal farmers, whom we are saying we do encourage to breed and have what we can say food security, you know, nutrition security. Yeah, for those ones we can encourage them to grow the mixed sex. But for those who are going for growth, which is our mantra, going for growth, we need to go for monosex culture. Sex reversed fingerlings have to be brought in. So I will now introduce you to Lorraine Salim, our master's student, who will give a brief talk on sex reversal.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very detailed. On that note, viewers, we've come to the end of the second segment. We're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030. We are here in the third and final segment, and today we were looking at breeding stock fish production here in Zimbabwe. Like I have said earlier on in segments prior to this one, some of our farmers are into table fish production, which is okay, but we are also going to be imparting knowledge to our local farmers in terms of breeding stock when it comes to fish production here in Zimbabwe. At this point in time, I've taken the liberty of inviting Lorraine Salim. She is a student with the University of Zimbabwe, undertaking studies fisheries and aquaculture. Lorraine, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Wadzanai.
Yes, as I was talking to Ms. Rawahera earlier on, she told us about an important aspect when it comes to breeding stock, which is sex reversal. Can you maybe talk to us in terms of what is it? A brief synopsis or definition of what sex reversal is in fish production, and also how does it take place? How do you do it? Is it mechanized? Do you need equipment? Do you need machines? How long does it take in terms of achieving it in fish production?
Thank you. So sex reversal is a technique that is employed in fish farming to produce monosex populations. So when we're talking about monosex populations, we're just saying we want to achieve 100% of either male or female populations in aquaculture. And it has been employed because males grow much bigger than females. So when we're looking at someone that wants to get 100% rewards after the 6 or 8 months that they're producing their fish, would give them 100% males. So it is done artificially using a hormone which is called 17-alpha methyltestosterone. This is a synthetic androgen. Androgen is just a sex reversal hormone.
Okay.
And it is, you administer that in feed, and the optimum that we usually use, the optimum dose is 60 milligrams per kgs in your feed. And this is administered when a fry is about 1 to 30 days. And we can give them that, giving them their starter one. But we do not encourage every farmer or any hatchery that wants to do production to start with sex reversal, because it has certain limitations and you have to have certification for you to use this hormone.
Okay.
So basically that's the gist of sex reversal. The science behind that is that when a fry is born, it has got equal hormones of estrogen and testosterone.
Yes.
So we can't really say it's a male or it's a female. It's both during the first 30 days. So administering the hormone would allow you to increase the hormone levels of testosterone, and it will allow you to push so that we have phenotypic characteristics of a male.
Okay.
And after 30 days, they're stable, and you're able to stop feeding them the hormone, and you start giving them your actual.
They would have
feed.
fully transitioned into male.
Yes,
Okay.
fully transitioned into males and being stable at that time.
Okay.
So that means that by the time you get to 30 days, if it's a male, you get maybe 80% to 90% conversion. So you now have 80 to 90% of your population being males.
Okay.
So as Ms. Zahira alluded to before, if we have a lot of males in a pond, chances are they're not going to reproduce because they'll be fighting a lot. So if you have 90% of males, we assume that you're not going to be having any breeding taking place.
Okay.
And your fish will put more of their energy into eating the food and just growing instead of them putting energy into breeding.
Can you talk to us in terms of a Zimbabwean farmer who wants to get into breeding stock or maybe even just table fish production? Some of your findings within your research and those key fundamentals that you would want to emphasize on in this episode for our local farmers so that the fish business can also flourish. You know, in Zimbabwe, you would find that 25 huku, 50, 100. We are trying to push the same agenda when it comes to fish production. According to your findings, talk to that Zimbabwean farmer who wants to get into fish production from a researcher's perspective. You are an expert, you are knowledgeable in the field. Talk to us in terms of that.
Well, because of the use of the 17-alpha-methyltestosterone hormone, everyone is a bit skittish about whether I won't turn into a male if I eat the fish eventually.
Oh.
So this research that we're currently carrying out in collaboration with the Fisheries Department looks at other alternative methods that we can use and that are cheaper. The hormone is quite expensive. For about 5 grams, you buy it for about $1,000 or $1,200 US.
Oh, okay.
So that's pretty expensive when you're looking at the normal farmer that, you know, on
the
top
small
of,
scale farmer.
yes,
Okay.
yes, on top of all other costs that are feed related. So we're looking at other cheap alternatives, which include green light irradiation. This is pretty new technology, which has been used on other species in Japan. And this green light irradiation just allows you to use green light so that you foster sex reversal.
Oh.
So this is work still in progress. And we also have the use of other traditional herbs. Kudhara anambuya vaikura vachiti ichi chinoshandiswa kuwedzera testosterone in men.
Kuwedzera urume.
Hey.
Okay.
And we are looking at some of those plants. We have actually identified 4 of the plants that we're trying to use in sex reversal in fish.
Okay.
And these ones are locally available. They're locally sourced. They include parsnip tree. We've got snake apple. We've got a tree called mondia, and we also have another one called violet tree.
Okay.
And all of these are locally available, locally sourced materials that we're currently using as well, and are showing progress and positive results in sex reversal.
Thank you so much, Lorraine, for taking your time to talk to us in terms of sex reversal when it comes to breeding stock for our Zimbabwean farmers. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you, Wadzanai.
On that note, viewers, we've come to the end of this episode. We're looking at breeding stock when it comes to fish production here in Zimbabwe. From me, your host Wadzanai Manyore, I'm also on Instagram. It's a W Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes. Have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.